The Revenge of the 47 Ronin took place in Japan at the start of the 18th century. One noted Japanese scholar described the tale, the best-known example of the samurai code of honor, bushidō, as the country's national legend. The story tells of a group of samurai who were left leaderless after their daimyo Asano Naganori was compelled to commit seppuku for assaulting a court official named Kira Yoshinaka, whose title was Kōzuke no suke. The Ronin avenged their master's honor by killing Kira, after waiting and planning for a year. In turn, the Ronin were themselves obliged to commit seppuku for committing the crime of murder. This true story was popularized in Japanese culture as emblematic of the loyalty, sacrifice, persistence, and honor that people should preserve in their daily lives. The popularity of the tale grew during the Meiji era of Japanese history, in which Japan underwent rapid modernization, and the legend became entrenched within discourses of national heritage and identity. Fictionalized accounts of the tale of the 47 Ronin are known as ka-shingara. The story was popularized in numerous plays, including bunraku and kabuki. Because of the censorship laws of the shogunate in the Genroku era, which forbade portrayal of current events, the names were changed. While the version given by the playwrights may have come to be accepted as historical fact by some, the first ka-shingara was written some 50 years after the event, and numerous historical records about the actual events that predate the ka-shingara survive. The Bakufu censorship laws had relaxed somewhat 75 years later in the late 18th century, when Japanologist Isaac Titsing first recorded the story of the 47 Ronin as one of the significant events of the Genroku era. The story continues to be popular in Japan to this day. Each year on December 14, Senkaji Temple holds a festival commemorating the event. Name: the participants in the revenge are called the Shi-jū-shichi-shi in Japanese, and are usually referred to as the 47 Ronin, or 47 lordless samurai in English. The event is also known as vendetta or the Genroku, also known as incident. Literary accounts of the events are known as the ka-shingara. Story: in 1701, two daimyo, Asano Takumi no Kami Naganori, the young daimyo of the also known as domain, and Lord Kame of the Tsuano domain, were ordered to arrange a fitting reception for the envoys of the emperor in Edo, during their Sankin Katai service to the shogun. These daimyo names are not fictional, nor is there any question that something actually happened in Genroku 15, on the 14th day of the 12th month. What is commonly called the also known as incident was an actual event. For many years, the version of events retold by A.B. Mitford in Tales of Old Japan was considered authoritative. The sequence of events and the characters in this narrative were presented to a wide popular readership in the West. Mitford invited his readers to construe his story of the 47 Ronin as historically accurate. And while his version of the tale has long been considered a standard work, some of its precise details are now questioned. Nevertheless, even with plausible defects, Mitford's work remains a conventional starting point for further study. Whether as a mere literary device or as a claim for ethnographic veracity, Mitford explains. In the midst of a nest of venerable trees in Takanawa, a suburb of Edo, is hidden Senkaji, or the Spring Hill Temple, renowned throughout the length and breadth of the land for its cemetery, which contains the graves of the 47 Ronin, famous in Japanese history, heroes of Japanese drama, the tale of whose deed I am about to transcribe. Mitford appended what he explained were translations of Senkaji documents the author had examined personally. These were proffered as proofs authenticating the factual basis of his story. These documents were the receipt given by the retainers of Kira Kōzuke copyright no suke copyright son in return for the head of their lord's father, which the priests restored to the family. A document explanatory of their conduct, a copy of which was found on the person of each of the 47 men, dated in the 15th year of Genroku, 12th month. A paper which the 47 Ronin laid upon the tomb of their master, together with the head of Kira Kōzuke copyright no suke copyright. See Tales of Old Japan for the widely known, yet significantly fictional narrative. Genesis of a tragedy. Asano and Kame were to be given instruction in the necessary court etiquette by Kira Kōzuke no suke Yoshinaka, a powerful Edo official in the hierarchy of Tokugawa Tsuneyoshi's shogunate. He became upset at them, allegedly either because of the insufficient presents they offered him, or because they would not offer bribes as he wanted. Other sources say that he was naturally rude and arrogant, or that he was corrupt, which offended Asano, a devoutly moral Confucian. Whether Kira treated them poorly, insulted them, or failed to prepare them for fulfilling specific bakufu duties, offense was taken. Asano bore all this stoically. Kamei became enraged and prepared to kill Kira to avenge the insults. However, the quick-thinking counselors of Kamei averted disaster for their lord and clan by quietly giving Kira a large bribe. Kira thereupon began to treat Kamei nicely, which calmed Kamei. However, Kira allegedly continued to treat Asano harshly, because he was upset that the latter had not emulated his companion. Finally, Kira insulted Asano, calling him a country boor with no manners, and Asano could restrain himself no longer. At the Matsu no Oira car, the main grand corridor that interconnects different parts of the shogun's residence, Asano lost his temper and attacked Kira with a dagger, wounding him in the face with his first strike. His second missed and hit a pillar. Guards then quickly separated them. Kira's wound was hardly serious, but the attack on a shogunate official within the boundaries of the shogun's residence was considered a grave offense. Any kind of violence, even drawing a katana, was completely forbidden in Edo Castle. The daimyo of also known as had removed his dagger from its scabbard within Edo Castle, and for that offense, he was ordered to kill himself by committing seppuku. Asano's goods and lands were to be confiscated after his death, his family was to be ruined, and his retainers were to be made Ronin. This news was carried to Oeishi Kurinosuke Yoshio, Asano's principal counselor, who took command and moved the Asano family away, before complying with bakufu orders to surrender the castle to the agents of the government. The Ronin plot revenge. Of Asano's over 300 men, 47, especially their leader Oeishi, refused to allow their lord to go unavenged, even though revenge had been prohibited in the case. They banded together, swearing a secret oath to avenge their master by killing Kira, even though they knew they would be severely punished for doing so. Kira was well guarded, however, and his residence had been fortified to prevent just such an event. The Ronins saw that they would have to put him off his guard before they could succeed. To quell the suspicions of Kira and other shogunate authorities, they dispersed and became tradesmen and monks. Oeishi took up residence in Kyoto and began to frequent brothels and taverns, as if nothing were further from his mind than revenge. Kira still feared a trap, and sent spies to watch the former retainers of Asano. One day, as Oeishi returned home drunk, he fell down in the street and went to sleep, and all the passers-by laughed at him. A Satsuma man, passing by, was infuriated by this behavior on the part of a samurai by his lack of courage to avenge his master as well as his current debauched behavior. The Satsuma man abused and insulted Oeishi, kicked him in the face, and spat on him. Not too long after, Oeishi went to his loyal wife of 20 years and divorced her so that no harm would come to her when the Ronin took revenge. He sent her away with their 2 younger children to live with her parents. He gave the eldest boy, Chikara, a choice to stay and fight or to leave. Chikara remained with his father. Oeishi began to act oddly and very unlike the composed samurai. He frequented geisha houses, drank nightly, and acted obscenely in public. Oeishi's men bought a geisha, hoping she would calm him. This was all a ruse to rid Oeishi of his spies. Kira's agents reported all this to Kira, who became convinced that he was safe from the retainers of Asano, that they must all be bad samurai indeed, without the courage to avenge their master after a year and a half. Thinking them harmless and lacking funds from his retirement, he then reluctantly let down his guard. The rest of the faithful Ronin now gathered in Edo, and in their roles as workmen and merchants gained access to Kira's house, becoming familiar with the layout of the house and the character of all within. One of the retainers went so far as to marry the daughter of the builder of the house, to obtain the house's design plans. All of this was reported to OEISHI. Others gathered arms and secretly transported them to Edo, another offense. The attack. After 2 years, when OEISHI was convinced that Kira was thoroughly off his guard, and everything was ready, he fled from Kyoto, avoiding the spies who were watching him, and the entire band gathered at a secret meeting place in Edo to renew their oaths. In Genroku 15, on the 14th day of the 12th month, early in the morning in a driving wind during a heavy fall of snow, OEISHI and the Ronin attacked Kira Yoshinaka's mansion in Edo. According to a carefully laid-out plan, they split up into 2 groups and attacked, armed with swords and bows. One group, led by OEISHI, was to attack the front gate. The other, led by his son, OEISHI-Chikara, was to attack the house via the back gate. A drum would sound the simultaneous attack, and a whistle would signal that Kira was dead. Once Kira was dead, he planned to cut off his head and lay it as an offering on their master's tomb. They would then turn themselves in and wait for their expected sentence of death. All this had been confirmed at a final dinner, at which OEISHI had asked them to be careful and spare women, children, and other helpless people. OEISHI had 4 men scale the fence and enter the porter's lodge, capturing and tying up the guard there. He then sent messengers to all the neighboring houses, to explain that they were not robbers, but retainers out to avenge the death of their master, and that no harm would come to anyone else. The neighbors were all safe. One of the Ronin climbed to the roof and loudly announced to the neighbors that the matter was a revenge act. The neighbors, who all hated Kira, were relieved and did nothing to hinder the raiders. After posting archers to prevent those in the house from sending for help, OEISHI sounded the drum to start the attack. 10 of Kira's retainers held off the party attacking the house from the front, but OEISHI-Chikara's party broke into the back of the house. Kira, in terror, took refuge in a closet in the veranda, along with his wife and female servants. The rest of his retainers, who slept in barracks outside, attempted to come into the house to his rescue. After overcoming the defenders at the front of the house, the 2 parties led by father and son joined up and fought the retainers who came in. The latter, perceiving that they were losing, tried to send for help, but their messengers were killed by the archers posted to prevent that eventuality. Eventually, after a fierce struggle, the last of Kira's retainers was subdued. In the process the Ronin killed 16 of Kira's men and wounded 22, including his grandson. Of Kira, however, there was no sign. They searched the house, but all they found were crying women and children. They began to despair, but OEISHI checked Kira's bed, and it was still warm, so he knew he could not be far away. The death of Kira, a renewed search disclosed an entrance to a secret courtyard hidden behind a large scroll. The courtyard held a small building for storing charcoal and firewood, where 2 more hidden armed retainers were overcome and killed. A search of the building disclosed a man hiding. He attacked the searcher with a dagger, but the man was easily disarmed. He refused to say who he was, but the searchers felt sure it was Kira, and sounded the whistle. The Ronin gathered, and OEISHI, with a lantern, saw that it was indeed Kira. As a final proof, his head bore the scar from Asano's attack. At that, OEISHI went on his knees, and in consideration of Kira's high rank, respectfully addressed him, telling him they were retainers of Asano, come to avenge him as true samurai should, and inviting Kira to die as a true samurai should, by killing himself. OEISHI indicated he personally would act as a keshakunin and offered him the same dagger that Asano had used to kill himself. However, no matter how much they entreated him, Kira crouched, speechless, and trembling. At last, seeing it was useless to ask, OEISHI ordered the other Ronin to pin him down, and killed him by cutting off his head with the dagger. Kira was killed on the night of the 14th day of the 12th month of the 15th year of Genroku. They then extinguished all the lamps and fires in the house and left, taking Kira's head. One of the Ronin, the Ashigaru Terazaka Kashiemon, was ordered to travel to also known as and report that their revenge had been completed. The aftermath. As day was now breaking, they quickly carried Kira's head from his residence to their lord's grave in Sinakuji Temple, marching about 10 kilometers across the city, causing a great stir on the way. The story of the revenge spread quickly, and everyone on their path praised them and offered them refreshment. On arriving at the temple, the remaining 46 Ronin washed and cleaned Kira's head in a well, and laid it, and the fateful dagger, before Asano's tomb. They then offered prayers at the temple, and gave the abbot of the temple all the money they had left, asking him to bury them decently, and offer prayers for them. They then turned themselves in. The group was broken into 4 parts and put under guard of 4 different daimyo. During this time, 2 friends of Kira came to collect his head for burial. The temple still has the original receipt for the head, which the friends and the priests who dealt with them all signed. The shogunate officials in Edo were in a quandary. The samurai had followed the precepts of bushidō by avenging the death of their lord. But they had also defied the shogunate authority by exacting revenge, which had been prohibited. In addition, the shogun received a number of petitions from the admiring populace on behalf of the Ronin. As expected, the Ronin was sentenced to death for the murder of Kira. But the shogun had finally resolved the quandary by ordering them to honorably commit seppuku instead of having them executed as criminals. It is known that each of the assailants ended his life in a ritualistic fashion. Oeishi-Chikara, the youngest, was only 15 years old on the day the raid took place, and only 16 the day he had to commit seppuku. Each of the 46 Ronin killed himself in Genroku 16, on the 4th day of the 2nd month. This has caused a considerable amount of confusion ever since, with some people referring to the 46 Ronin. This refers to the group put to death by the shogun, while the actual attack party numbered 47. The 47th Ronin, identified as Terazaka Kashiemon, eventually returned from his mission and was pardoned by the shogun. He lived until the age of 87, dying around 1747, and was then buried with his comrades. The assailants who died by seppuku were subsequently interred on the grounds of Sinakuji, in front of the tomb of their master. The clothes and arms they wore are still preserved in the temple to this day, along with the drum and whistle. The armor was all homemade, as they had not wanted to arouse suspicion by purchasing any. The tombs became a place of great veneration, and people flocked there to pray. The graves at the temple have been visited by a great many people throughout the years since the Genroku era. One of those who visited the tombs was the Satsuma man who had mocked and spat on Oeishi as he lay drunk in the street. Addressing the grave, he begged for forgiveness for his actions and for thinking that Oeishi was not a true samurai. He then committed suicide and was buried next to the graves of the Ronin. Re-establishment of the Asano clan's lordship. Though the revenge is often viewed as an act of loyalty, there had been a second goal, to re-establish the Asano's lordship and finding a place for fellow samurai to serve. Hundreds of samurai who had served under Asano had been left jobless, and many were unable to find employment, as they had served under a disgraced family. Many lived as farmers or did simple handicrafts to make ends meet. The revenge of the 47 Ronin cleared their names, and many of the unemployed samurai found jobs soon after the Ronin had been sentenced to their honorable end. Asano Daigaku Nagahiro, Naganori's younger brother and heir, was allowed by the Tokugawa shogunate to re-establish his name, though his territory was reduced to a tenth of the original. Criticism: the Ronin spent more than 14 months waiting for the right time for their revenge. It was Yamamoto Tsunetomo, author of the Hagakure, who asked the well-known question, what if, 9 months after Asano's death, Kira had died of an illness? His answer was that the 47 Ronin would have lost their only chance at avenging their master. Even if they had claimed, then, that their dissipated behavior was just an act, that in just a little more time they would have been ready for revenge, who would have believed them? They would have been forever remembered as cowards and drunkards, bringing eternal shame to the name of the Asano clan. The right thing for the Ronin to do, wrote Yamamoto, according to proper bushidō, was to attack Kira and his men immediately after Asano's death. The Ronin would probably have suffered defeat, as Kira was ready for an attack at that daimyo, but this was unimportant. Oeishi from the perspective of Bushido, was too obsessed with success, according to Yamamoto. He conceived his convoluted plan to ensure they would succeed at killing Kira, which is not a proper concern in a samurai. The important thing was not the death of Kira, but for the former samurai of Asano to show outstanding courage and determination in an all-out attack against the Kira house, thus winning everlasting honor for their dead master. Even if they had failed to kill Kira, even if they had all perished, it would not have mattered, as victory and defeat have no importance in Bushido. By waiting a year, they improved their chances of success but risked dishonoring the name of their clan, the worst sin a samurai can commit. This is why Yamamoto and others claim that the tale of the 47 Ronin is a good story of revenge, but by no means a story of Bushido. In the arts, the tragedy of the 47 Ronin has been one of the most popular themes in Japanese art, and has lately even begun to make its way into Western art. Immediately following the event, there were mixed feelings among the intelligentsia about whether such vengeance had been appropriate. Many agreed that, given their master's last wishes, the Ronin had done the right thing, but were undecided about whether such a vengeful wish was proper. Over time, however, the story became a symbol, not of Bushido, as the Ronin can be seen as seriously lacking it, but of loyalty to one's master and later, of loyalty to the emperor. Once this happened, the story flourished as a subject of drama, storytelling, and visual art. Plays. The incident immediately inspired a succession of kabuki and bunraku plays. The first, The Night Attack at Dawn by the Soga, appeared only 2 weeks after the Ronin died. It was shut down by the authorities, but many others soon followed, initially in Osaka and Kyoto, farther away from the capital. Some even took the story as far as Manila, to spread the story to the rest of Asia. The most successful of the adaptations was a bunraku puppet play called Kanedion Ka Shingara, written in 1748 by Takeda Izumo and 2 associates. It was later adapted into a kabuki play, which is still one of Japan's most popular. In the play, to avoid the attention of the censors, the events are transferred into the distant past, to the 14th century reign of Shogun Ashikaga Tokaji. Asano became Enyo Hangun Takazada, Kira became Kono Morine and Oeishi became Oeboshi Uranosuk Yoshio. The names of the rest of the Ronin were disguised to varying degrees. The play contains a number of plot twists that do not reflect the real story. Morine tries to seduce Enya's wife, and one of the Ronin dies before the attack because of a conflict between family and warrior loyalty. Opera. The story was turned into an opera, Ka Shingara, by Shigeaki Sayagusa in 1997. Cinema and television. The play has been made into a movie at least 6 times in Japan, the earliest starring Ono Matsunosuke. The film's release date is questioned, but placed between 1910 and 1917. It has been aired on the Jidai Geki Senman channel with accompanying Benchi narration. In 1941, the Japanese military commissioned director Kenji Mizoguchi, who would later direct Agetsu, to make Genroku Ka Shingara. They wanted a ferocious morale booster based upon the familiar Rikishi Geki of the loyal 47 Ronin. Instead, Mizoguchi chose for his source Meyama Ka Shingara, a cerebral play dealing with the story. The film was a commercial failure, having been released in Japan 1 week before the attack on Pearl Harbor. The Japanese military and most audiences found the first part to be too serious, but the studio and Mizoguchi both regarded it as so important that Part 2 was put into production, despite Part 1's lukewarm reception. Renowned by post-war scholars lucky to have seen it in Japan, a film wasn't shown in America until the 1970s. The 1962 film version directed by Hiroshi Inagaki, Ka Shingara, is most familiar to Western audiences. In it, Toshiro Mifune appears in a supporting role as spearman Toraboshi Genba. Mifune was to revisit the story several times in his career. In 1971 he appeared in the 52-part television series Daichi Shingara as Oeishi, while in 1978 he appeared as Lord Tsuchiya in the epic Swords of Vengeance. Many Japanese television shows, including single programs, short series, single seasons, and even year-long series such as Daicho Shingara and the more recent NHK Teiga drama Genroku Ryo-ran, recount the events of the 47 Ronin. Among both films and television programs, some are quite faithful to the Ka Shingara, while others incorporate unrelated material or alter details. In addition, Gaiden dramatize events and characters not in the Ka Shingara. Kanekakawa directed another version in 1994. In 2004, Saito Mitsumasa directed a 9-episode mini-series starring Matsujiro Ken, who also starred in a 1999 49-episode TV series of the Ka Shingara entitled Genroku Ryo-ran. In Hirokazu Korida's 2006 film Hana Yori Moneho, the events of the 47 Ronin story was used as a backdrop, one of the Ronin being a neighbor of the protagonists. Most recently it was made into a 2013 American movie, titled 47 Ronin, released on December 25, 2013. Woodblock prints. The 47 Ronin are one of the most popular themes in woodblock prints, or ukiyo-e, and many well-known artists have made prints portraying either the original events, scenes from the play, or the actors. One book on subjects depicted in woodblock prints devotes no fewer than 7 chapters to the history of the appearance of this theme in woodblocks. Among the artists who produced prints on this subject are Utamaro, Toyokuni, Hokusai, Kunizada, Hiroshige, and Yoshitoshi. However, probably the most widely known woodblocks in the genre are those of Kuniyoshi, who produced at least 11 separate complete series on this subject, along with more than 20 triptychs. In the West, the earliest known account of the also known as incident in the West was published in 1822 in Isaac Titsing's posthumously published book Illustrations of Japan. The 1998 spy thriller action film Ronin, directed by John Frankenheimer, does not retell the story of the 47 Ronin overtly, but instead directly invokes the legend as a means to add a moral and ethical dimension to the actions of a crew of former intelligence operatives of various nations who have turned mercenary in the years following the dissolution of the Soviet Union. These former spies, operating outside of the control of their various national intelligence organizations, have in effect become modern Ronin. In the film, a former French spy portrayed by Michael Lonsdale, who has created elaborate dioramas in his retirement depicting the various episodes of the 47 Ronin, queries an American former operative Sam, who he has been giving shelter to, about whether he understands the 47's decision to commit seppuku following the success of their revenge. Sam replies simply, "They chose wrong." Depending on one's understanding of bushidō, the warrior's code, simple obedience to the former master, or the warrior's dedication to realization of his unique potentiality, the viewer is left with several ironies to choose from in interpreting the Americans' reply and subsequent actions, or whether the creators of the film understood the implications of the story of the 47 Ronin themselves. The action film 47 Ronin was released on December 25, 2013, by Universal Pictures and starred Keanu Reeves as an outcast who joins the samurai in their quest to avenge their slain master. Many Japanese actors, such as Hiroyuki Sanada, Tadanobu Asano, Kei Shibasaki, Rinko Kikuchi, and Jin Akinishi, also appear in the film. Gallery Notes. References: Alon, John. The 47 Ronin Story. New York. Dickens, Frederick V. Chushingara, or The Loyal League. London. Forbes, Andwa. Henley, David. 47 Ronin, Tsukioku Yoshitoshi edition. Chiang Mai, Cognoscenti Books. A Scene, BOOADQGLB 8, Forbes, Andwa. Henley, David. 47 Ronin, Utagawa Kuniyoshi edition. Chiang Mai, Cognoscenti Books. A Scene, BOOADQM82, Keene, Donald Chushingara, A Puppet Play. New York. Mitford, Algernon Bertram Freeman Mitford, Lord Redesdale. Tales of Old Japan. London, University of Michigan. Robinson, B. W. Kuniyoshi, The Warrior Prince. Ithaca. Sato, Hiroaki Legends of the Samurai. New York. Screech, Time and Secret Memoirs of the Shoguns, Isaac Titsing in Japan, 1779–1822. London. Stewart, Basil. Subjects portrayed in Japanese color prints. New York. Titsing, Isaac Mar. Copyright Moise Anecdotes sur la dynastie Ra. Copyright Gnanti des Jogans, Souverains du Japon. Paris, NEPVEU. Weinberg, David R. Al-Kuniyoshi, The Faithful Samurai. Leiden. External links, Robson, Lucia Street. Clare. The Tokaido Road. Forge Books. New York. Chushingara and the Samurai Tradition. Euro comparisons of the accuracy of accounts by Mitford, Murdoch and others, as well as much other useful material, by a noted scholars of Japan. Akko's 47 Samurai. Euro website produced by students at Akko High School. Contains the story of the 47 Ronin story, and images of wooden votive tablets of the 47 Ronin in the Oishi Shrine, Akko, The Trouble with Terazaka, the 47th Ronin and the Chushingara Imagination by Henry D. Smith II, Japan Review, 2004, 16:3-65. Well photos. The well where 47 Ronin washed the head of Kira. 5 different woodblock print versions of the story by Ando Hiroshige, National Diet Library. Photograph of Sinakaji. Photograph of Sinakaji, Yoshitoshi, 47 Ronin series. Further reading, Turnbull, Stephen. The Revenge of the 47 Ronin, Edo 1703. Osprey Raid Series No. 23, Osprey Publishing. ISBN 978-1-84908-427-7.